Welcome back to Windsor Chronicles, where we go beyond the palace press releases and glossy photo ops to uncover what's really happening inside the royal world. I'm your host, and today we're taking a closer look at how King Charles III is quietly and rather strategically reshaping the monarchy, even as the next generation waits in the wings. It's been 3 years since the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. And while the anniversary came and went last month with little fanfare, the royal machinery has been anything but still. Between Prince Harry's brief UK visit and the Windsor's collective scramble to appear visible, one article slipped out that deserves our attention. The Telegraph ran a feature titled, "How King Charles is Reshaping the Monarchy." And it might just be one of the clearest signals yet that Charles is putting his own stamp on the crown, one that blends tradition with transformation. Let's break it down. The piece landed just a day after Prince William's new travel documentary, The Reluctant Traveller, aired. In it, William mused about what kind of king he hopes to be someday. The timing was interesting, almost competitive. Because while Scooter King William was busy philosophizing about the future, his father, the current monarch, was busy doing what he does best, showing, not telling. That same evening, King Charles was hosting a dinner at Dumfries House for the King's Foundation, his charitable initiative focused on preserving heritage crafts and sustainable design. But here's the twist. As he mingled with guests, most of them under 35, Charles called them change-makers. The symbolism was striking. While his son talked about change, Charles embodied it, subtly but surely. Those who've watched Charles's reign closely describe it as a bridge, connecting old and new, formality and accessibility, monarchy and humanity. When he took the throne, aides designed his early image as threefold: sovereign, servant, and son. He had to assert authority as the new king, maintain a sense of duty to the nation, and still be the man mourning his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. One insider called it a tripod. If any one of those 3 legs faltered, the whole structure might wobble. And so far, Charles has managed to keep it standing, even if imperfectly. He's modernizing the monarchy not through grand declarations, but through a quieter kind of recalibration. Fewer working royals, more focus on legacy institutions, and a noticeable shift toward environmental and social engagement. His lifelong passions finally centre stage. Here's where it gets interesting. One palace aide apparently compared the monarchy to Doctor Who. Stay with me here. They said each new monarch must be different but the same. The crown regenerates itself like the Doctor, familiar yet refreshed. Every new reign starts with skepticism. They're not like the old one. And then, before you know it, people adjust, and the cycle repeats. It's a clever way of describing survival by adaptation. Charles isn't trying to be his mother. In fact, he's deliberately not. Where she was inscrutable, he's expressive. Where she stayed silent, he occasionally speaks out, sometimes too much for palace traditionalists. But evolution is necessary. Without it, the institution risks becoming a museum relic. And whether you admire or criticize him, Charles has made one thing clear. His version of monarchy will not be a carbon copy of the last. Of course, for all the talk about modernization and regeneration, the royal household still has its old, unsolved problems, namely the Duke of York and the Duke of Sussex. Royal biographer Sally Bedell-Smith recently said the king needs to act decisively on both fronts before the mess lands in William's lap. With Prince Andrew, that might mean finally removing his title or forcing him out of royal lodge. With Prince Harry, the challenge is far more emotional and far more public. Charles's inability to repair that relationship remains a major stain on his reign. While he's proving competent in his statecraft, he's failing dramatically in his family craft. And that has long-term consequences, because William, by most accounts, isn't emotionally or intellectually ready to inherit a fractured royal house. The monarchy might be reshaping, but the fault lines are still there. Here's the paradox. King Charles might be doing a solid job as monarch, even as he continues to fall short as a father. He's restored purpose to the crown, focused its mission, and embraced modern values. But behind palace walls, his relationships remain frozen, especially with Harry and Meghan, whose absence is still felt more than anyone admits. That lingering bitterness, the Cold War between Windsor and Montecito, exposes the one area where Charles's bridge has failed to connect. For all his talk of unity, the king has yet to heal his own family. So where does that leave us? Charles's reign is shaping up to be one of transition, a monarchy adjusting to the 21st century while holding on to its 20th century Polish. He's shown that change doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's found in tone, in focus, in subtle symbolism, like a monarch who hosts a dinner for young changemakers instead of dignitaries. But his success will ultimately be measured not by how well he preserves the past, but by how gracefully he prepares the future, and the future king. Because the real test of Charles's reign won't come during his lifetime. It will come the day the crown passes to William. And when that day arrives, we'll see whether this reshaped monarchy truly holds, or whether it crumbles under the weight of old wounds and unfinished business. That's all for today's episode of Windsor Chronicles. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to follow and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And as always, thank you for listening, where we separate the palace myth from the royal reality. Until next time, I'm your host, reminding you, crowns may glitter, but the truth always shines brighter.